Hello, it is I, Dr. Brian Lorgon 111, coming at you with what might end up being the final installment of Vanilla Swirl CTM developer commentary, where I'm going through kind of all of the code and logic of what goes into the making of this map. And for today, the main focus is going to be the spawn area, basically kind of the initialization and setup of the whole map, as well as the stuff that's at the monument here. So let's go ahead and jump right into some of the source code. So there's a few hundred lines of code in place starting commands, which is kind of all of the overall initialization of the map. And I'm just going to go through a few interesting pieces of it. So the first bit we've got on the screen, you can see adds all of the diorite pillars that come up out of the ground and kind of denote the transition between the daylight and nighttime areas of the map. And basically I just go and every so often, at a different number of degrees, because it's a big circle around the center of the map, just place another diorite pillar with glowstone on the top. And then there's a whole lot of command blocks that initialize some scoreboard stuff for various things and initialize some other game rules and whatnot. And I'm not showing all of them here, but there's just the first few just to get a sense of some of the startup code. And then there's the monument itself. So we've got kind of the blocks of obsidian, which is where you're going to place the monument blocks. And on the front, there are wall signs that have the names of the blocks that you're going to be placing, the endstone bricks, the purpur, and the sponge block. And on the back of the monument, there are a couple of signs that enable and disable the death counter. And so there are some code to go ahead and place those signs. And then there's the starter chest. There's both an ender chest at the very bottom that you can see, but then there's also an untrapped chest filled with items, and the items are basically the starting items that you get, things like the iron axe that's got Bane of Arthropods 5 on it, as well as shield and food and all that kind of stuff, and then also all the starting books that you get that explain kind of an overview of the map and the rules and suggestions and all that kind of stuff. So that's relatively straightforward. Moving on, there's also the code that places the bonus monument and the chests that are there. And so basically for each different color, we have to decide, where are the empty spaces in the top half of the chest that we're going to place iron bars, just to kind of like denote the outside of the chest versus the blocks. And there's also some a written book in the top corner that basically explains the bonus monument. And then in the bottom half, we basically have to go and count how many of the different stained glass colors we've actually placed in the map, which I've got stored in a color count array, and actually place those stained glass in the chest, as well as the iron bars that kind of like separate out and denote certain things. And I also give the player half a stack of maps that they can use for mapping out the world as they're exploring if they choose to. And so there's a bit of code here, but it's, again, all pretty straightforward. It's just kind of populating some of the items in the chest at spawn. Next up, we have the teleporter hub, which is the bedrock room that's right below the monument at spawn. And so it's basically a big bedrock box. And so set block ID and damage 707 is the value of bedrock, and 00 is air. And so basically we're placing bedrock blocks and air blocks in order to hollow out the interior of the teleport hub and surround it in bedrock. And then we surround the whole outside of it in light blue stained glass clay. I originally, in kind of like alpha and beta versions of the map, I just had the starting area was just you'd be standing on the bedrock directly, and people pointed out that that was aesthetically horrible, and so I added kind of a light blue stained clay candy coating on the top of the monument, and it does make it look a whole lot better. I think it was Thungan who basically suggested that, so thank you, Thungan, for making the spawn area look prettier. And there's a beacon that gets placed under the whole thing, and beacons just have the property that they can shine through any transparent blocks, and they can also shine through bedrock. So the fact that the floor and the ceiling of the teleporter are bedrock doesn't matter, because the beacon just shines right through it. I think that was originally so that beacons would be able to work in the nether, but it's a very handy property for some other things as well, especially for map makers like me. And the floor and the ceiling of the teleporter hub are there. Is there anything else that's interesting here? Right, and there's a little chest of items that basically has a written book that explains the teleporter hub and how it works. So that's the interesting code there. Skipping down a little bit, there's another interesting bit of code that if you watch the playthrough that I did with Kurt, I had a map that I called the Kurt Special, which basically had a few little fun bits for me and Kurt to play through. And one of them was that all of the sheep in the map were pink sheep because I changed them all pink. And so here's the code that does it. Basically, I iterate over all of the region files in the map, and then I iterate over all of the chunks in those region files, and then I iterate over all of the entities in those chunks, and the entities are things like the mobs. And if customization knobs.cart special is turned on, then I look through each of those entities, and if it's a sheep, then I go and I find its color, and I change its color to color 6, which happens to be pink. And so that's, yeah, the everywhere make all the sheep pink bit there. And then also just for diagnostics, when I'm checking out seeds and doing some curation, I want to know how many food animals are kind of in the spawn area, because sometimes you start like in a desert and there aren't many food animals around, and it can make the map a bit like easier or harder, kind of unintentionally. And so just to keep track, I go and I count up all the sheep and pigs and cows and chickens and rabbits that are inside the daylight radius. And I kind of print it out as diagnostics when I'm actually running through the code so that I know what to expect in terms of when players are getting started and if they're trying to kill some food animals. There's also some command blocks that affect different gameplay things. You've seen me in a bunch of these videos basically switching back and forth between holding that fermented spider eye that gives you night vision. And so the code for that is here, and it's just an item that has a special NBT tag that says night vision 1. And so I can see if a player is holding that item, and if they are, I can tag them and I can end up giving them potion effects or taking those potion effects away. And similarly, later in the map, when you get the elytra chest, there's also jump boost boots that you can be wearing, and similarly I can test for players when they're wearing those, and if so, give them a jump boost effect, and if they're not wearing them anymore, take it away. And so that's just some examples of the commands that go and make that stuff happen. There's also a Silverfish limiter that I actually originally implemented after I was watching someone on a low-end computer play one of the original March versions of the maps. And sometimes, especially like in the Green Beacon Dungeon and Purple Beacon Dungeon when you're underground, if a creeper blows up and explodes and some silverfish get out and there's witches around and the witches are throwing potions at each other, sometimes you end up with a whole lot of silverfish, and it can really lag the game and make it just no fun. Like, if a creeper explodes and there's 10 silverfish they have to fight off, that's great, because that's the reason I put the silverfish in there. It's to make it a challenge. It's to make it a penalty for letting the creeper explode. But if there's 100 silverfish, that's no longer any fun. So I added the silverfish limiter. I think in single player it caps it to 20 silverfish, and in multiplayer it caps it to 25. But basically, there's a bunch of commands here that I won't go into the details of, but basically just keep a count on how many silverfish are hidden or are living in the world. And if there's more than a certain number, then any new fish that try to spawn will just get teleported down into the void so that they disappear. And as a result, the player can kind of, fight off the silverfish hordes without having to worry about getting completely overrun and lagging up the game. Then there's also a bunch of commands related to things with the Explorer bonus monument. There are things that test for when you've actually put the items in the chest so that it knows which ones it should be looking out for. And so if you've already put a pink stained glass in the chest, then it doesn't need to, when you're holding the bonus glass proximity detector, let you know that you're near other pink ones. And so I have to keep track of which ones are currently in the chest. That's kind of the top half of what's going on here, or some of it. And the bottom half, or some of it, of what's going on here is basically then looking for armor stands, because I think we've seen that there's armor stands kind of inside all the bonus loot chests that are hidden throughout the world. And each one knows what color glass it actually is. And so it looks for those armor stands and sees if they're ones that aren't currently in the chest and decides if they are currently close to the player. And if so, sets a particular nearness value of their score. And I'm just going to jump down past some more of the code here to get to the meat then, where depending upon the player's nearness score, if they happen to be holding the bonus glass proximity detector, then we can figure out what value of the tone to play and what string to put up on the heads up display that says, cold, warmer, very warm, hot. And so those are some of the commands related to that. And yeah, and then there's also commands that then just check each time you actually place a new color of stained glass into the chest of the bonus monument, so that it sets off a little firework sound and says, you've placed 5 of 16 colors in the bonus glass monument or whatever. And so there's commands that go and check and recognize those conditions and have those side effects for printing things out and playing the fireworks sound as well. Then if we go back into Minecraft for just a second, there's also this map that is right over here behind me, the map of the world, a biome map of the world, pre-swirl, that appears on this, map that's here. It's kind of like an in-game map. I think actually, yeah, if I go, let me go back into, why am I, oh, I know, I don't have the heads up display turned on. F1. I was like, why can I not see my inventory? What's going on here? If I go into game mode 0, go back into survival mode and actually just grab one of these maps off the wall, I think, yeah, it'll say map 10,003. It's actually map number 10,000, 10,001, 10,002, 10,003. That are these 4 bits of the map that are printed on the wall. And so they're kind of like fake maps where I've just written the map data to disk and aren't actually, maps of any portion of the world, which you can probably guess because of the fact that it also has vanilla Swirl CTM on here. And so let's take a look at the code for how I get these to show up. And there's just going to be 2 pages of code here. The first one is, once again, kind of big, quote-unquote, pixel art, where I have the white versus black pixels of the, vanilla Swirl CTM URL that I put on the bottom of the map. But basically what I do is I have all of the biome information from the map. And so once again, I walk over all the X and Z coordinates of the actual map from negative 1048 to positive 1048. So kind of, or 1024 to positive 1024. So 2048 by 2048 kind of region. I average out the biomes because maps are actually maps are always 128 by 128, and since we have 4 maps, kind of like a 2x2 grid of maps that's on the wall over here, we end up being 256 by 256, and so I have to scale down the 2048 by 2048. I have to scale that down by a factor of 8, and so basically I average over an 8x8 area and figure out what the most common biome is, and call it the representative biome for a particular pixel to decide what color I'm going to display it. And yeah, then I actually go and draw it on the map. I have a map color index, which is basically just, there's also a finite set of colors that can actually appear on a Minecraft in-game map. And so I just have a table that says this biome would look good in this color. And so a mesa ends up being a kind of dark red color, and a plains biome ends up being a light green color. And so we look up a particular color index, and then I also do things for elevation, because you may have seen on the map, like when you're in extreme hills, there's like some dark dots that kind of suggest that you're at elevated areas. And so based on the elevation, I tweak the color to like darker versions of the color and lighter versions of the color. And then I add the URL thing, basically just by walking over that pixel array that we saw on the previous page and setting some pixels to white or black, or the corresponding, map color indexes. 119 is a very black color, and 34 is a very white color, blackish and whitish, you see in the comment over there. And this actually gets written as just an image on disk inside the map folder, as well as these 4 map files, map 10,000, 10,001, 10,002, 10,003. And yeah, if you didn't know, just like each time you create a new map in Minecraft, it becomes, map 001 or map 002 or map 003. And so unless you were to create 10,000 maps, you'd never end up kind of overwriting the maps that I've already kind of artificially created and written to disk with this code here. And so that's mostly it for the source code I want to go over. Like, there's a lot more code. I have code to recompute the world lighting. I have the code that reads and writes the Minecraft files on disk, which is a library that I wrote. But I'm not going to go into kind of like those internal underlying details. I do want to talk through a little bit of the workflow that I use. And so this is just from some notes that I have whenever I'm trying to put out a new release of the map, of kind of like the checklist of steps that I need to do. One of the first things I do is I scout out seeds, and the way I do that is there's a tool called Amidst, where you can just type in a seed number and it shows you the biome layout of a particular seed. And so I will often take, 15 minutes and just check every seed from 600 to 700, and any of the seeds that look good. I try to find seeds that don't have too much ocean. I try to find seeds that have a wide variety of biomes. I try to find seeds that don't have water right at spawn, so that you're actually spawning on land rather than in the ocean or in a swamp. And there's probably a few other criteria that I use that I can't think of right now. But I look for what appear to be good seeds amidst first. And so if I go through 100 seeds in 15 minutes, like I'll write down like 10 of them that look like they're good, plausible seeds. And then the next thing I do is I go into Minecraft, and I've learned this through experience. I kind of learned this the hard way after I actually kind of like put out a couple of poorer maps. But basically, there's a lot of variability with the caves that appear under spawn. And I want there to be good caves under spawn, because the first thing I suggest for the player to do is to go caving so that they can get some resources and also hopefully find dungeons. And so with the modified Minecraft custom world customization settings I use, because I turn up the dungeon rate, for example, I go and generate the world, and I go to 0, and I go into spectator mode, and I fly underneath the world, and I just kind of look around and get a sense of how the caves look and if there's dungeons nearby and things like that. And so just that step alone, now that I've added that step to my own process, tends to eliminate like 2 out of 3 seeds just like that, because a lot of them just don't have good caves at spawn. And that was a problem in the playthrough that I did with Kurt. I did not pre-scout the underground, and it wasn't a particularly good underground there, and there weren't very many dungeons and good cave systems near spawn. And we spent the first 2 or 3 episodes kind of just caving and not making a lot of progress. So yeah, I trim down seeds like that, and yeah, then pick a few seeds that look plausible. And once I do have what I think is a good seed, I tweak various customization knobs. So each time I'm going to actually like publish a map, I want to make it single player or multiplayer, and possibly make an easier version of the map or a hard version of the map, or the other customization knobs that we saw way back in probably like episode 4 of the developer commentary series or something, if I'm remembering correctly. Set up the world names. So that's the when it actually appears on the world load screen, it shows up as Vanilla Swirl May 2016 A, or whatever the name of the map is. And I pre-generate my world using a world pre-generator command block contraption, which is a thing that I made many months ago and use it all the time now. But basically, it's a thing that basically you can go and create a seed and put down a command block contraption and walk away for 15 minutes, and it will generate all the terrain in like a 2048 by 2048 area. Just letting Minecraft run, because the terrain generator is one of the slowest bits of Minecraft. And so I pre-generate the world, and then once the world is pre-generated, then I go and run my program, the Vanilla Swirl algorithms that go and read the Minecraft map files and then make all these changes that we've been going over for the last week of going through the code. And so I run it, and then I talked a little bit about it in this episode and also in some previous ones. There's various debugging bits of output that I'll also use to kind of curate the seed. So things like, are there enough food animals near spawn? And I've got now some diagnostics that actually tell me how many dungeons are there inside the spawn radius and how many of them are actually reachable from a cave system that opens up to the surface, as opposed to just being kind of enclosed in a cave underneath that no one's going to find. And how many of those cave openings are actually near where I mark something as a glowstone pillar. And I also look at an overview map. How do the beacons look? Do I have green beacons that are closer than the red beacons, that are closer than the mountain peaks, that are closer than the purple dungeon, that are closer than the hidden elytra chest, kind of like on the overview map of the world? And so I just eyeballed that and make sure that that looks okay. And if all those things look okay, then I actually need to prepare the world to be like a thing that I can download. And so I need to go into the world. Let spawn settle is basically like there's some command blocks that run the first time I enter the world after my program is run, and poked in some command blocks that are going to do some things. And so I have to let them do all the things that they're going to do. There's an icon that appears in the world load screen, and so I go and delete the default icon that's there, and I get my player standing so he's looking in a good portion of the world, because if you save and exit the game and reload the game, it will just make a new icon with whatever you happen to be looking at right at that moment. And so make a little nice icon for the Minecraft world load screen. Do any manual customization. I rarely do this now, but in the past, when there were some bugs at spawn, like I would go and manually edit some blocks at spawn in creative mode and kind of fix up the box. And then put the player in the starting box. I basically go and fly up with the character and put him in the starting position, run some commands to put him in survival mode, make sure the default game mode is survival mode in case people are going to play this on a multiplayer server. Clear any potion effects, because it's often the case that I have night vision when I'm flying around and checking and testing different things in the map. Clear the player's inventory, because I accidentally released one of the maps where the player starts out holding a command block, because I still had a command block in my inventory. Oops. Remove the stats and player data, because Lorgon 111 otherwise would have, achievements and different things that are stored on disk that you don't need to download that extra data whenever you're going to be downloading the map. I clear out all of the kind of unused chunks that are on the outside of the map, outside of the world border now, so that they're just like empty chunks. There's just like void out there, because it decreases the world download size, so that it's just easier and quicker for people to download the map. Which isn't a checklist here because it's just automated, but it's just something I thought of. Change the folder map name, and so the actual folder that it saved on disk, I just rename it and make a copy of it. And so at this point, I think I have a master copy that I could go and upload on the website and say, here's a new published map. But then I make a copy of it and I go in and I play through a tiny bit of it. I go and spectator mode fly through. I check out some of the dungeons. I look at the glowstone pillars that are going into cave entrances. I have some metrics for all the different dungeons. For example, the Red Beacon dungeon, that it tries to put it on flat terrain, but some terrain is better than others. And so I take a look at, for example, the worst cobweb dungeon that I actually placed and make sure that it still looks okay, or the worst mountain peak that I placed that doesn't have exactly the right shaped mountain as far as my algorithm can tell, and make sure that it still looks okay and is good enough. Make sure that the orchid atop the elytra chest is placed in the proper place. Make sure that the map that's given inside the bonus monument chest actually is a map of the world at the center, because if you saw it in Kurt and I's playthrough, the first time I did that, that screwed up, but I've got that code fixed now, so that always seems to work. So yeah, basically, once I've made what I think is a master copy, I take a copy of that and I play through it and just make sure that everything seems to look okay, so that I can catch any other mistakes that I may have made before I publish the map. So that's kind of the process and the checklist of what I go through to do it. And yeah, it's these manual steps that take the most time, and it's usually the case that anytime I'm producing a map, I find another bug or two, or have another small idea or two, so I end up going and tweaking and re-implementing something in the code. And so, yeah, things like that make this take more time. But if everything goes completely smoothly, in theory, I could put out another map without making any other changes in an hour's worth of human time, kind of doing all the things in this list probably. So there you have it. After on the order of 6 months or so, I have all the stuff I did in order to create this map, or actually not this map, but the set of maps, all the vanilla swirls. I guess I've released 10 different vanilla swirl maps over the last 2 or 3 months. And I don't know that there's necessarily any others coming up. I haven't started working on any other releases. I have a few other ideas of things that I'd like to do, but I think I'd like to make things a little bit different if I'm going to release any other maps. The good news is I do have kind of a good foundation, a base of a lot of useful algorithms that I could reuse in other contexts to do interesting things, but I'm ready to take a short break from it for right now. Hopefully I managed to explain a lot of this stuff in useful ways that people got at least some sense of what it's like putting together a map like this. If you have other questions, by all means, you can ask them in the comments and I will try to reply to them. Or if there's a bunch of really good questions, I might do one more video to just try to talk through some other Q&A that people have asked on the series. But in any case, that is Vanilla Swirl CTM. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it. I enjoyed playing it. I've enjoyed really a whole lot watching other people play it. It's really been fun for me. I actually just spent, the last 2 hours watching some more people play the map, and I really get a real kick out of that. And so, yeah, I think the secondary enjoyment of watching other people enjoy the map is the thing that's the most valuable to me. All right, I'm rambling. I hope, as always, you guys are having a great day, and I will see you again soon with probably some Terraria, because I'm about to go away out of town for a week or so, and I've pre-recorded some Terraria, so I expect that is going to be the thing that you will see air on the channel next. In any case, rambling. Bye-bye.